The metal dock was cold under her feet, the air sharp with the smell of fuel and rust. The alien girl stood at the very edge, her eyes locked on the black sky beyond the city walls. She had been standing there every evening for 30 days, never moving until the last ship left the port. Her name was Lyra. She was small for her kind, with pale blue skin and long dark hair that swayed gently in the wind. In her hand, she held something tightly, a small object wrapped in cloth. She never showed it to anyone, not even to the curious dock workers who sometimes asked what it was, still waiting for him. One of the workers called out from behind her. His voice was teasing, mocking. Lyra didn't answer. She kept her gaze on the sky, searching for that one ship, the one that had not come for an entire month. The workers had their own stories. They said humans were unreliable, that once they left, they rarely came back. They said she was foolish to wait for a human, especially a human captain with no reason to return. But Lyra ignored them every time. A month ago, that human had done something no one else would. He had saved her from men who wanted to sell her. He didn't ask for payment, didn't ask for thanks. He only gave her the object she now held and told her to keep it safe. Then he was gone. Lyra thought he would return the next day or the day after. But days became weeks, and weeks became a full month. Still, she stayed. Storms had come and gone. The sky had turned from golden sunset to freezing black night. Ships had docked, ships had left, but none of them were his. Each night she walked home slowly, her chest tight, her eyes burning. But every morning, she told herself, he will come today. And every evening she returned to the dock. The port was a loud place, filled with the clanging of metal cranes, the shouts of traders, the roar of engines. But Lyra barely noticed. She only listened for one sound, the deep hum of his ship's thrusters. She had memorized the way it sounded. When it landed, it was different from all the others, slower, heavier, like a heartbeat in the air. The other aliens at the port had started to keep their distance from her. They thought she was strange. Some whispered that she had lost her mind waiting for a human. Some said she was cursed, but Lyra didn't care what they thought. That night, the air was colder than usual. The wind carried fine dust that stung her cheeks. She pulled her coat tighter around her and stepped closer to the edge of the dock. From here, she could see the great black expanse where ships emerged from the trade lane. Her fingers tightened around the object in her hand. She had promised him she would return it. She had promised herself she would not give it to anyone else. No matter how many times thieves had tried to snatch it. No matter how many times someone had offered her food or credits in exchange for it. She refused. The sky was empty again, and for a moment her heart sank. Maybe tonight would be like all the others. Maybe he really had forgotten. She turned slightly, ready to leave when a faint light caught her eye. It was small at first, like a star, but it was moving. Growing brighter, closer. The shape of a ship began to form in the darkness. Lyra's heart began to pound. Her breath caught in her throat. The thrusters roared softly in the distance, and the sound sent a shiver through her. She knew this sound. She had waited a month for this sound. The workers noticed the incoming ship too. Some of them stopped their work to watch. One of them whispered, "No, it can't be." Another said, "Looks like your human finally remembered you." Lyra didn't answer. She couldn't speak. The ship descended slowly, its dark hull catching the dim lights of the dock. It bore scars, deep marks across the metal as if it had been through battle. The landing gear touched the dock with a heavy thud. The engines wound down with a low growl. The ramp began to lower. The air around Lyra felt heavy. Like the moment before a storm, she took one step forward, her hands trembling, her lips parted, but no words came out. The sound of boots on metal echoed in the cold air. A shadow moved in the ship's doorway, and then he stepped out, the human captain. His face older, sharper, his coat torn in several places. His eyes scanned the dock slowly, and when they fell on her, he stopped for a long moment. Neither of them moved. The wind rushed between them, carrying the smell of fuel and rain. Lyra's heart raced so fast she thought it might burst. She whispered, so softly it was almost lost to the wind. "You came back a month earlier." The market was alive with noise. Lyra had been walking through the crowded stalls, her head low, her hood pulled tight over her hair. She was trying not to be seen. But the market was full of eyes. Vendors shouted prices, children laughed and ran between the stalls. And traders from many worlds argued over goods. The air was heavy with the smell of roasted grain and hot oil. In her pocket, Lyra had a few small coins, not enough to buy much, but enough to keep her moving. She had been on her own for weeks. Every day was the same. Walk the market. Find food, avoid trouble, but trouble had a way of finding her. It started with 3 tall men. Their clothes were clean, but their eyes were sharp. They were traders, but not the kind who sold fruit or cloth. These men dealt in living beings. They had been watching her for days, and today they decided to act. One of them stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Another moved behind her. She could smell the sweet, oily scent of their skin. "You look lost," the one in front said with a smile that was not friendly. "We can give you a place, food, work." Lyra said nothing. She knew their words were a trap. She turned to walk away. But the one behind her caught her arm. His grip was tight. His smile was wider now. "Come with us," he said. "You will be treated well." Her heart pounded. She tried to pull free, but his hand was strong around them. The crowd kept moving. No one wanted to get involved. No one wanted trouble with traders like these. And then, through the market noise, she heard it, a calm, steady voice. "Let her go." The men turned. And there he was, a human. His jacket was worn, his hair dark and messy. His eyes sharp, but not unkind. He was not tall compared to the traders, but there was something about him, stillness, that made the men hesitate. "This is not your business," one of the traders said. "Walk away, human." The human stepped closer. His hand rested lightly on the weapon at his side. But he did not draw it. His voice stayed calm. "Let her go." The grip on Lyra's arm loosened. The trader holding her frowned. "She is for sale," he said. "We found her first." The human's eyes didn't move from the man's face. "She is not yours to sell," he said. His voice was quiet, but every word felt heavy. The crowd had slowed now. People were watching. The traders didn't like that. With a curse, the man let Lyra go and stepped back. "She's not worth it anyway," he muttered. And the 3 of them melted back into the crowd. Lyra stood frozen for a moment. Her arm ached where the man had held her. The human looked at her, his gaze softer now. "You should be more careful," he said. She lowered her hood, looking at him fully for the first time. "Why did you help me?" she asked. He shrugged lightly. "Because you needed it." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver key with strange markings. He placed it in her hand. "Keep it safe," he said. "Don't let anyone have it." She looked down at the key, confused. "What is it?" she asked. He shook his head. "It's not important now." Then he turned to leave. "Wait," she called. "Don't you want it back?" "Not yet," he said over his shoulder. "You'll know when." And with that, he disappeared into the market crowd. Lyra stood there for a long time, staring at the key in her hand. The metal was cool, smooth, but it felt heavier than it should. She didn't know why he had given it to her, but something told her it was important. That night, she kept the key under her pillow. She thought about the human's voice, the way he had stood so calmly against the traders. She didn't know his name. She didn't even know if she would see him again. But in her heart, she decided something. If he ever came back, she would return the key to him, no matter what it took. The days after the market felt long and empty. Lyra had walked away from that place with the silver key hidden deep in her pocket. Every time her fingers touched it, she remembered his voice telling her to keep it safe. She didn't know why, but the human's words stayed in her mind. She didn't know his name, didn't know where he had gone. All she knew was that he had stepped into danger for her when no one else would. And then he had given her something that felt too important for someone like her to hold. At first, she thought he might return quickly. Maybe the next day she would see him again. Maybe he would come back for the key. But days turned into weeks, and he didn't return. Lyra lived in a small room above an old storage house near the dock. The walls were thin, and the floor creaked when she walked from her window. She could see the giant port where ships came and went. She often found herself watching the landing platforms for hours, hoping for a glimpse of his ship. The people around her didn't understand. Why are you waiting for a human? The woman who sold bread asked. They come and go, they don't look back. Another neighbor shook his head. He probably forgot about you. Lyra never argued with them. She didn't tell them about the key. She didn't tell anyone. It was safer that way, but keeping it safe wasn't easy. The city was dangerous for someone alone. More than once, thieves had tried to take her bag once. A man grabbed her wrist when she was buying food, demanding to know what she was hiding. She had fought back, kicking and twisting until she broke free. Then she ran through the narrow streets until she reached her room, locking the door behind her. At night, she kept the key under her pillow. Some nights she would take it out and turn it over in her hands, tracing the strange markings. They were not from her world. And the metal felt unlike anything she had touched before. It was smooth yet strong, light yet unbendable. She wondered why he had trusted her with it. Why not hide it himself? Why give it to someone he barely knew? The thought made her feel both proud and worried. Proud that he had chosen her. Worried because she didn't know if she could protect it forever. The dock became her second home. Every evening after her work was done, she went there and stood. At the edge, the cold wind bit at her skin, but she didn't care. She watched the black sky where ships appeared like falling stars. She memorized the shape of every vessel that landed. She learned the sound of their engines, but none of them were his. Weeks passed. The city changed around her. Markets closed and reopened. Ships came and left. Storms rolled in and out. But her routine stayed the same. People began to talk, calling her the girl who waits. Some laughed, others shook their heads. A few even pitied her. One night, a dock worker came to her as she stood staring at the sky. "He's not coming back," he said. "Humans don't wait like we do. They move on." She didn't answer. She just kept watching the stars, still deep inside. A small voice told her not to give up. That voice grew louder every time she touched the key, every time she remembered the way he had looked at her in the market. Calm and certain. There were nights she almost lost hope. Nights when the wind was so cold her hands shook. Nights when she thought about staying in her room instead. But she always went back to the dock. The thought of missing his return was worse than the cold. She didn't know that far away. In the deep black between worlds, his ship was fighting battles she couldn't imagine. She didn't know how close he had come to never returning. All she knew was that the sky was wide, and somewhere in it, the human was still out there. And so she waited, alone, mocked, and sometimes afraid, but still waiting. Because a promise had been made, even if it had never been spoken aloud. The wind howled across the dock that night, carrying the sharp bite of winter. Lyra stood at her usual spot, her coat pulled tight, her hands hidden in the sleeves. The metal under her boots was icy, but she didn't move. Her eyes scanned the black horizon. The sky was empty again, just like the night before. And the night before that, she almost let her shoulders drop, almost turned to walk away. But then she saw it, a faint light, far off in the darkness. At first, she thought it was just another freighter. The light was small, blinking against the black. But as it grew brighter, her heart began to race. The way it moved, the way it cut through the night, it felt familiar. She stepped closer to the edge of the dock. The cold air stung her face. Her breath came faster. The workers nearby stopped what they were doing, some glancing up at the incoming ship. The hum reached her ears, deep, steady, and heavy, like a heartbeat in the air. She knew that sound. It was his. It had to be his. The ship emerged from the shadows, its dark hull catching the faint lights of the dock. It was bigger than she remembered, but damaged. The metal was scarred, the paint chipped. Long black marks ran along the side where weapons had struck. This ship had been through battles. It lowered slowly, the thrusters kicking up dust and debris. The sound made the air tremble. Her hands gripped the railing so tightly her knuckles turned pale. The landing gear touched down with a heavy thud. The engines wound down, leaving an eerie silence. The workers stood frozen, watching as the ramp began to lower. Lyra's chest felt tight. Her eyes didn't leave the ramp. The sound of metal shifting filled the air, and then boots, heavy, steady footsteps echoed against the dock. A figure appeared in the doorway. His shadow stretched across the ramp. The human stepped into the light. His face was older, sharper, his coat torn in several places. A cut along his cheek. His eyes scanned the dock slowly, almost warily, when his gaze landed on her. He stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them. The dock workers glanced at each other, whispering, but Lyra didn't hear them. Her whole world had narrowed to the man standing in front of her. She took a step forward. Her voice was soft, almost swallowed by the cold wind. "You came back." He didn't move right away. His expression was unreadable. Then, finally, he took a step down the ramp. His boots clicked against the metal. His eyes stayed on hers. "You're still here," he said. His voice was rough, tired. But there was something else in it, something she couldn't name. "I waited," she said simply, her fingers curled around the object in her pocket. The silver key pressing into her palm every day. The human's eyes flickered with something, maybe surprise, maybe guilt. "It's been a long month," he said, glancing briefly at the scars on his ship. "I didn't know if I'd make it back." "You did," she said. Her voice was steadier now. She took another step toward him. The space between them felt heavy, full of things unsaid. The workers began to drift away. Sensing this was not a moment they should interrupt, the dock fell quiet except for the low hum of cooling engines. The human looked at her again, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Why did you wait?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the cloth-wrapped object. Slowly, she unwrapped it, revealing the silver key. The dim dock lights glinted off its surface. "I kept it safe," she said, holding it out to him. Her hands were trembling slightly. "Like you told me to." His eyes went to the key, and for the first time since stepping off the ship, his expression changed. There was a flicker of recognition, and then something deeper, relief, maybe even gratitude. "You still have it," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I promised," she replied. Her voice was soft, but her words were firm. He reached out slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. His fingers brushed hers when he took the key. The contact sent a strange jolt through her. She looked up at him, searching his face for a reaction. He closed his hand around the key and let out a slow breath. "You don't know what this means," he said. His voice was low, almost heavy. "Or what you've done by keeping it safe." She tilted her head slightly. "Then tell me." But instead of answering, he looked past her, scanning the shadows along the dock. His jaw tightened. "Not here," he said. "Too many years." She nodded slowly. The cold wind swept between them. Again? But this time it didn't feel as sharp. The human took one last look at her before turning toward his ship. "Come with me," he said. His voice was not a request. But it wasn't unkind either. Lyra hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, following him up the ramp. The air inside the ship was warmer. But the tension between them stayed. Whatever he had been through, whatever battles had scarred his ship, it was clear this was only the beginning. The door of the human ship closed behind them with a low hiss, shutting out the cold night air of the dock. The hum of the engines was faint now, replaced by the quiet creak of metal and the distant sound of tools rattling in their cases. Lyra stood near the entrance, her eyes adjusting to the dim light inside. The ship smelled faintly of oil, steel, and something warm, a scent she didn't recognize but somehow felt safe around. She could hear his footsteps echo softly as he walked. Toward the control room, she followed slowly, her fingers still tingling from when he had taken the key. Her mind was full of questions, but her lips stayed pressed together. She didn't want to break the strange, heavy silence between them. He stopped in the center of the control room, his back to her. The lights from the consoles glowed faintly, casting shadows across his face when he turned halfway toward her. "You shouldn't have kept it," he said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "It's dangerous." Her brow furrowed. "Dangerous?" "You told me to keep it safe." "I did," he said, glancing at the key in his hand, "but I didn't expect you to actually hold on to it for this long." "Not here, not on this planet." She took a slow step forward. "I promised I would keep it until you came back." Her voice was quiet but steady. "Why wouldn't I?" He looked at her for a long moment, something flickering in his eyes. "Because people would kill for what's inside this," he said finally, lifting the key slightly. "And they wouldn't have cared if you lived or died." Lyra's chest tightened. She had been chased before, threatened before, but hearing it from him made it heavier. "Then why give it to me at all?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. His gaze dropped to the floor as if the answer was buried somewhere. "In the shadows there," finally he said, "because no one would expect you to have it." Her fingers curled into her palms. "So I was just a hiding place?" she asked. Her voice carried a faint sting. His head lifted, his eyes meeting hers. "No," he said firmly. "I gave it to you because I thought you could handle it." Silence filled the space again. The quiet hum of the ship systems the only sound. Lyra took another step closer, the distance between them shrinking. She looked at the key, then back at him. "You still haven't told me what it is." He shook his head slightly. "It's better if you don't." "No," she frowned. "Better for me, or better for you?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost like he wanted to smile but couldn't. "Both," he said, then turned away. Setting the key down gently on the console, his hands moved over the controls, adjusting something she couldn't see. Lyra's eyes stayed fixed on the key. It caught the light, the silver markings glowing faintly. She had carried it for a month, fought to keep it safe, and now it sat there. Inches away from him, she stepped closer to the console, her voice dropping. "When you gave it to me, I thought it meant something." His hands paused over the controls. He didn't look at her, but his voice was lower now. "It did." Her breath caught for a moment. She wanted to ask what he meant, but before she could speak, a sharp beeping sound cut through the air. The human turned quickly to the console, scanning the screen. His expression hardened. "They know," he muttered under his breath. His hand closed over the key again. "Who knows?" she asked. He looked at her then, the seriousness in his gaze making her heart pound. "The ones who are looking for this," he said. "The reason I left it with you?" Lyra's pulse quickened. She remembered the traders, the thieves, the whispers in the market. She had thought they were just after her for being alone. Now she realized it had been about the key all along. "You should give it to them then," she said. "If it's that important, maybe they'll leave you alone." He shook his head sharply. "It's not something you give away, if they get it." Everything changes, and not for the better. Her mind spun with questions she still didn't have answers to. But she could see in his face that this was no game, no small danger. Whatever was inside that silver key, it was worth dying for. The beeping stopped, replaced by a low, steady hum. The human tucked the key into a hidden pocket inside his jacket. Then he looked at her again, his voice steady. "You've done more than I ever expected by keeping this safe." Lyra felt heat rise to her cheeks. She didn't know why. But those words meant more to her than they should have. She crossed her arms lightly. "So now what?" His gaze didn't leave hers now. "We make sure it never ends up in the wrong hands," he said. "And you're not walking away from this. Not after what you've done." Her eyes widened slightly. She wasn't sure if he meant it as a warning or a promise. But one thing was certain. Her quiet life of waiting was over. The hum of the ship's systems filled the room, steady and low. Lyra stood near the control console, her eyes fixed on the human. He sat in the pilot's chair, turning the silver key over in his fingers like it was both precious and dangerous. "You've carried this for a month," he said quietly, "fought to keep it, kept it hidden, and you still don't know what it is." She shook her head slowly. "You never told me." His eyes stayed on the key, the metal catching the dim light. "This isn't just a key," he said. "It's a data core, one of the last of its kind." The words meant little to her. She tilted her head. "What's in it?" He finally looked up at her. His eyes were sharp now, his voice low. "Coordinates." Her brows drew together. "To what?" "To a fleet," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Not just any fleet. A hidden human fleet. Ships built for war, hidden away since the last galactic conflict. The wrong people find them, they could start a war that would burn half the galaxy." Lyra stared at him, her mind struggling to hold the weight of his words. She had been carrying this thing in her pocket for weeks, sleeping with it under her pillow, and all the while it had been holding something that could change everything. "Why give it to me?" she asked, her voice quieter now. He leaned back in his chair. "Because no one would suspect you. The people hunting me, they watch every move I make. But you were just a girl in a market. They wouldn't think twice about you." Her chest tightened. She remembered the thieves, the traitors, the way people had stared at her in the market. They had been looking at her twice, just not for the reasons she thought. "You risked your life for this," she said slowly. He shook his head. "You risked yours too. You just didn't know it." The silence that followed was heavy. Lyra felt the weight of the past month pressing down on her. The cold nights at the dock, the stares, the whispers, all of it had been for something she didn't understand until now. A faint alarm chirped from the console. The human's head snapped toward the screen. His fingers flew over the controls, pulling up a display. "What is it?" she asked quickly. "They found us," he said, his voice flat. "2 ships on approach, no transponders. That means bounty hunters." Her stomach tightened. "For the key." "For the key. For me. Maybe for you too," he said, standing quickly. "Either way, they won't ask questions before firing." He moved to a side panel and opened a hidden compartment. Inside were weapons, sleek, dark, and dangerous looking. He pulled one out and checked the charge before slipping it into a holster at his hip. Lyra took a step closer. "What do you want me to do?" His eyes flicked to her. "Stay close to me. Don't touch anything unless I tell you." The distant hum of the engines shifted as he brought the ship's systems to full power. The floor vibrated under her feet. Outside, through the small viewport, she could see 2 faint lights growing brighter, moving fast. "They'll try to disable us first," he said, moving back to the pilot's seat. But if they get close enough to board? He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. She already knew what that meant. Her hands curled into fists. She had been waiting for him for a month. Now, less than an hour after his return. They were in danger again, but strangely, she didn't feel fear the way she thought she would. Instead, she felt a sharp, hot determination. "They're not getting it," she said firmly, nodding toward the key in his jacket. His eyes flicked to her, surprised. A small, almost proud smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Good," he said, "because if they do, it's over for all of us." The ship's engines roared louder. The view outside shifted as he angled the vessel toward open space. The enemy ships were closing in, their lights now clear and sharp against the dark. Lyra gripped the back of his chair, the vibrations of the ship rattling through her hands. The human's movements were quick and precise, his focus unshakable. The comms crackled. Suddenly, a harsh voice filling the cabin. "Give us the core, and we'll let you live." The human didn't answer. His hand flicked a switch. Cutting off the channel, he muttered under his breath. "They always say that." The tension in the air was thick now, the lights of the pursuing ships grew brighter, filling the viewport. Lyra's heartbeat matched the thrum of the engines. She glanced at him again. "You're not giving it to them, are you?" He shook his head once. "Not in this lifetime." Her grip on the chair tightened. She didn't know how this would end, but one thing was certain: she wasn't letting him face it alone. And somewhere deep inside, she realized something waiting for him had been only the beginning. The enemy ships grew larger in the viewport, their sleek black hulls reflecting the faint starlight. The human's hands moved quickly over the controls. Adjusting speed and angle, the hum of the engines rose to a deep growl. Lyra stood close behind him, one hand braced on the back of his chair. Her heart pounded, but her eyes stayed fixed on the shapes chasing them. She could see flashes of light along their hulls, weapons warming up. "They'll fire soon," he said without looking back. His voice was steady, but she could hear the weight in it. "When they do, hold on to something." The first shot came like a streak of fire across the black. It missed, but the shockwave rattled the ship. Metal groaned, lights flickered. Lyra gripped the chair tighter. "They're not trying to kill us yet," he said, glancing at the scanners. "They want us alive so they can take the core." She clenched her jaw. "Then we don't let them get close." A faint smile touched his lips, but it didn't last. The second shot was closer, shaking the ship hard enough to throw her off balance. His hand shot out, catching her arm before she could fall. "Stay steady," he said, his grip warm and firm. "I need you on your feet." She nodded, planting herself against the floor. Her eyes never left the viewport. The enemy ships were faster than she had hoped, but his ship was holding distance. "For now, they're going to try and corner us," he said, adjusting the controls again. "Force us toward the asteroid field ahead. Is that bad?" She asked. "It's suicide," he replied, "but it's also the only way to lose them." The asteroids loomed in the distance, massive jagged stones drifting in slow, silent rotation. The space between them was narrow and dark, a dangerous maze even for skilled pilots. "You can fly through that?" she asked, doubt slipping into her voice. He gave her a quick glance. "I can." The enemy ships followed, closing in. The hum of the engines became a roar as he pushed the throttle forward. The ship jolted into the first gap between the rocks, shadows swallowing them whole. Lyra held her breath. The walls of stone slid past so close she could almost touch them. The human's focus was unshakable, his hands steady even as the ship twisted and turned through the maze. Behind them, the enemy ships hesitated. One followed, the other slowed. "Afraid of the tight spaces. That buys us time," he muttered. Angling the ship hard to the left, they scraped past a huge spinning boulder. sparks lighting the dark for a heartbeat, the single pursuing ship tried to follow. But its larger size made it clumsy. It clipped an asteroid. Spinning out of control before vanishing into the shadows, they'll pull back, he said. Finally letting the ship slow, the engines dropped to a softer hum. The danger wasn't gone, but for now, they were alone. Lyra let out a slow breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her shoulders loosened, and her grip on the chair eased. She looked at him. So, what now? He leaned back, the tension in his frame slowly easing. His eyes moved to hers, steady and unreadable. Now we make sure this never happens again, he said, tapping the pocket where the key was hidden. She hesitated before asking, and me? What happens to me now? For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he stood, stepping closer until he was right in front of her. You could have walked away, he said quietly. You could have thrown the key in the river and forgotten all of this, but you didn't. She looked down, unsure how to respond. He reached out and took her hand gently. You've done more for me than most of my own crew ever would, he said. His voice was softer now. So if you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. But if you stay, you'll be part of something bigger. Her fingers tightened around his without thinking. I've been waiting a month for you to come back, she said, her voice steady. I'm not leaving now. Something flickered in his eyes, relief, respect, maybe even something warmer. He nodded once, then you stay. The moment hung between them, unspoken but solid, outside. The asteroids drifted quietly, the danger fading into the distance inside the ship. The hum of the engines was steady again. He released her hand but didn't step far. You should rest, he said. We've got a long way ahead, and it's only going to get harder. She gave a faint smile. I've already done the hard part. His brow lifted slightly. Waiting? Waiting, she agreed. He chuckled softly, turning back to the controls. She watched him for a moment longer, the light from the console outlining his face. Then she stepped toward the passenger seat and sat down. The stars stretched ahead of them, bright and endless, and somewhere deep inside, Lyra knew this was no longer about a key or a fleet, or even the month she had spent waiting. 'Twas about the fact that she wasn't alone anymore, and she intended to keep it that way. No matter what came next.